Hello everyone, I am Ankit and you're watching StudyIQ IAS English channel. Now in our today's video, we are going to discuss whether monarchical system of government will it return to Nepal this time or not. Now there has been frequent demands to do so, particularly by people who are against the republican form of government that exists in Nepal currently. Now, I have to remember, Nepal, it abolished the monarchical system of government back in 2008. Hence, doing so, it became a secular federal republic just like India. But more than 17 years later, since democracy and the republican form of government was introduced in Nepal, pro-monarchy protests have been gaining momentum. And these protests, they are against the political corruption and lack of economic development by the democratic governments in Nepal since the introduction of republican form of government. Now the people and the forces who are opposed to this republican government, they are rallying behind the other symbol of power in Nepal, that is the former king Gyanendra Shah, and who has since then remained in constant touch with the people of Nepal. But what is causing this resurgence, and could actually monarchy be brought back to Nepal? Let us find out in our today's discussion. But before that, you have to take a very brief trip of what happened in Nepal back in 2000s or in early 2000s. Now between 1996 and 2006, Nepal was in a constant state of civil war which was led by Communist Party of Nepal, who supported the Maoist ideology. Now, this civil war, it resulted into death of almost 17,000 people. But as a result, it also led to significant gain in public and political support in favor of Communist Party of Nepal. Now, growing uncomfortable with this rising popularity of the Communist Party of Nepal, then King Gyanendra Shah, he ordered for dissolution of the elected government in Nepal, and while doing so, he suspended civil liberties which were then available to the Nepali citizen. He censored the media in highlighting any news that was against the monarchy of Nepal, and also jailed significant political leaders. But while doing so, it also sparked a massive protest in the streets of Nepal, which was called as People Movement, otherwise also known as Jan Andolan. Now, this Jan Andolan, that was a popular protest against the monarchy, was led by 7 principal parties of Nepal in addition to Maoist, and they had one single demand. That is, the king of Nepal should abdicate his throne. So, under popular pressure and also under political pressure, the king of Nepal then, Gyanendra Shah, he decided to abdicate his throne and reinstate the dissolved assembly of Nepal. And in 2008, we saw elections happening in Nepal, which was again the party which saw the massive gain politically in that elections was again the Communist Party of Nepal. And once coming into power, and the first order of business this Constituent Assembly did, that it abolished the monarchy and declared Nepal as a secular federal democratic republic just like India. And since 2008 onwards, we have seen that Nepal has since then become a multi-party democratic system. But what has happened with Nepal's tryst with democracy? Has it led to significant political stability and significant economic development in Nepal? Let us find that one out. Now, since Nepal has become democracy, since 2008, we have witnessed huge political instability in Nepal, as Nepal has had over a dozen of prime ministers since 2008, with governments frequently collapsing due to internal disputes. And in 2021, we saw the Communist Party of Nepal, which was the largest political party, becoming split into 2 different parties. Also, back in 2021, then Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli had to resign in office due to significant demands of political protest, and this has resulted into a deep political instability in the fabric of Nepal. Now, the consequences of this political instability has been rise in corruption and lack of economic development. For example, as per the Corruption Perception Index, Nepal lies at the position of 110 out of 180 countries, and this highlights that the corruption in Nepal is quite prevalent. For example, there was this long highlighted Lalit Niwas land scam where politicians and bureaucrats, they were alleged to be illegally transferring public land to private ownership, and this also involved several of 3 former prime ministers of Nepal. Also, there was this fake Bhutanese refugee scam which happened in 2023, where a former Prime Minister of Nepal and his wife, they were allegedly to be involved, and this is where officials and politicians, they were caught taking bribes to fraudulently send Nepali citizens as refugees to another country, posing them as Bhutanese citizen. So these were the examples of how corruption has plagued the Nepali society, and no prime minister has been without any charges of corruption since he or she has been in power of Nepal. So this is one consequences of political instability, that is huge and prevalent corruption. Now let us deal with another consequence of lack of political stability in Nepal, that is economic struggles. Now, for example, unemployment is a very big cause of concern in Nepal, as it stands around 11%. As many youths in Nepal, they are forced to migrate to other countries, including India, in search of better economic and job opportunities. Also, in terms of inflation and cost of living, Nepal is witnessing huge rise in inflation and rising cost of living, which has increased the financial burden on people of Nepal. For example, the most prized commodities like fuel and cooking gas, the prices have doubled in past decades, whereas on the other hand, the wages of people working in Nepal, they have remained stagnant, and as a result of this, people in Nepal are facing huge economic hardships. Also, as I told you, due to unemployment, people are forced to live and search for jobs in other countries, and as a result of which, you can see remittances, they make over 25% of Nepal's GDP, and over 4 million Nepalis, they live and work abroad, mainly in Gulf countries and Malaysia, and even in Western countries. You will see nowadays there are huge populations of Nepali diaspora living in these countries, and this highlights that there is indeed lack of economic opportunity and work opportunities in Nepal, which forces these people to move to other countries. Now, in addition to these crises, we have also seen that Nepal in general has struggled to deal with infrastructural development. Now, with any country that has large population with respect to its area, you need to have good and updated infrastructure, but is it available in Nepal? The answer is no. For example, Kathmandu's traffic congestion is one of the worst in South Asia, and this is due to poor urban planning. Similarly, Nepal witnessed electricity crisis which lasted until 2016, with daily power cuts up to 18 hours before reforms improved the energy production. Now you have to remember, Nepal has a huge hydropower generation potential, so technically Nepal shouldn't be facing such problems, but this is due to lack of hydropower generation infrastructure. Also, major infrastructure power projects like Kathmandu-Terai Expressway, Nijgard International Airport, they have faced significant and repeated delays, and now that the Nepali government has signed certain projects with Chinese government, this has also created a lot of controversy. So first of all, democratic government of Nepal is unable to take infrastructural and economic development, and while doing so, it has signed agreements with Chinese companies and government, which has also created a lot of political crisis in Nepal. Now, another factor of Nepal's political instability is the ethnic tension that has emerged in Nepal. Now, for any democratic government, you'd understand they deal with any kind of a political insurgency or any demand that might be coming from a section of society, because to deal with certain legitimate ethnic demands, the democratic system of government is the best suited government. This has happened in India also, that whenever there is a separate demand coming in from one part of the region, that is taken care of with the constitutional provision and the legal provisions that are the consequences of a democratic system of government. But since certain contradictions have not been resolved in Nepali society, because after adopting federalism in 2015, Nepal was divided technically into 7 different provinces, but disputes have emerged due to lack of resource allocation or lack of equitable resource allocation. Also, indigenous and marginalized group, they have argued that power in Nepal is still concentrated in Kathmandu, which leaves rural areas like Terai region neglected. And in Terai region, we saw massive protests happening in 2015 to 2016 that was known as Madhesi movement. Madhesi are actually people who live in southern Terai region of Nepal, quite close to India borders, and they have very close cultural and familial ties to people living across the border into India. Now, these people, they undertook violent protest against the then government of Nepal, highlighting highlighting that the federalism provisions in the then constitution of Nepal did not actually allow them certain proportional representation in the House of Nepali Parliament. And as a result of this movement, we saw over 50 people were killed due to such protests. And this has created a lot of controversy, that despite being introduction of democracy being done in Nepal, it has not led to removal of internal contradiction that existed in Nepali society, ideally which should have been done with the introduction of democracy in Nepal. Also, all of this problem, that is political instability, lack of economic development, ethnic tensions, all of this has contributed into declining public faith in democracy. And this can be highlighted by a 2022 survey by the Asia Foundation. It found out that over 50 Nepalis, they were dissatisfied with democracy, and many young people, they were forced to leave Nepal due to frustration with causes of political corruption and lack of work and economic opportunities. And this has contributed to rise in pro-monarchy protest, as this suggests that some citizens, they believe that the answer to this lack of economic development and political instability, it lies with monarchical system, because this monarchical system will indeed provide them with greater political stability, which will help people of Nepal deal with corruption, deal with lack of economic opportunity. So this brings to our topic, that will or if monarchy will return to Nepal or not. Now, former king Gyanendra, he has not openly expressed desire to return to power, but he has since confided his activity in issuing messages, which is to express concern over the situation in Nepal, be it worsening economic scenario or be it flight of youths abroad in search of livelihood opportunities. However, he had remained in constant touch with people, and he has even mingled with them during his pilgrimage tours both in different parts of Nepal and also in India. And perhaps the reason for it is that he was gauging his support in the ground among people of Nepal. Now, on February the 18th, on the eve of Nepal's Democracy Day, former Shah of Nepal, he issued a customary message soliciting the people's support for peace and progress in the country. Now, while doing so, in spirit of national unity and conciliation, he also suggested that his quiet withdrawal from royal palace, hoping that things would eventually get better for Nepal, has not eventually panned out that way. Rather, he suggested that in a traditional society like Nepal, what is needed is a symbol of unity. And this symbol of unity can indeed be provided by the monarchical system of government in Nepal. So this is how the demands of monarchical system of government has been emerged from people, and this has also been supported by the former Shah of Nepal, that is King Gyanendra. Now, Friday's incident, that was a large-scale violence that happened on the streets of Kathmandu, it appears to indicate that public anger against widespread corruption and the alleged scam of the democratically elected government, which includes almost every prime minister and senior politician in the country, seen as being involved. Now, these kind of protests are getting organized in Nepal. Now, there has been a practice in Nepal politics since 2006 that once another government comes to power, they grant immunity to politicians against any investigation by a cabinet decision. So this has actually angered the people, that once coming into power, even another parties, they grant immunity to politicians from the former government against any kind of an investigation against alleged corruption and illegal activities. Sorry. Now, because of this kind of political immunity and political and bureaucratic nexus that exists in Nepal, it is widely believed that the collapse of republican experiment and return of former monarchical system could lead to an investigation against these politicians for their alleged misdeeds, and also will likely to hold trials and convictions against these politicians. And this is the sole reason why people demand for Nepal to return back to the monarchical system of government, because first of all, monarchical system of government will provide Nepal with much needed political stability, which will help reduce corruption and have higher economic development, and it will also lead to trials, investigation and convictions of the politicians who were involved in the corrupt and illegal activities. So this was all from my side in today's video. Please stay tuned to our channel for more such updates, and let's see you in another video.